Joe Biden has been sworn in as the 46th President of the United States amidst a heavy security deployment and called for unity in his first speech as President. A powerful gas explosion tore through a residential building in the Spanish capital Madrid on Wednesday, killing at least 3 people and ripping the facade of the structure. Malian security forces fired tear gas at dozens of demonstrators in the capital Bamako this Wednesday during a rally against France's military role in the country. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Joe. Joe Biden has been sworn in as the 46th President of the United States amidst a heavy security deployment and called for unity in his first speech as President. President Joe Biden began his inaugural address with a moment of silence to honour the more than 400,000 Americans who've died due to the novel coronavirus. He noted we'll honour them by becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. Referring to recent events, Biden called on Americans to overcome their divisions, declaring that without unity there is no peace. He also pledged that he would be honest with the country as it continues to confront difficulties, saying that leaders have an obligation to defend the truth and defeat the lies. As he did frequently during his campaign, Biden pledged that he will be a president for all Americans and will fight as hard for those who did not support him as for those who did. And offering his first address as President of the United States, Joe Biden called on US citizens to come together as one nation in the face of the pandemic, highlighting the importance of unity to move forward.
It may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. I know, speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new.
And during his inaugural address at the US Capitol, President Joe Biden said he would be a president for all Americans.
I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did.
Prior to his inauguration, Joe Biden attended Mass at St. Matthew's Cathedral in Washington, D.C., a traditional step taken ahead of the swearing-in ceremony. At Biden's invitation, the first couple was joined by a bipartisan group of members of Congress, including all 4 top-ranking members of the congressional leadership. Biden takes the helm of a deeply divided nation, inheriting a confluence of crises arguably greater than any faced by his predecessors. Joe Biden swearing in as the 46th President of the United States brings an end to 4 years of Donald Trump's leadership in Washington. Biden was sworn in by Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts, and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, held the Bible as he took the oath. The Bible used has been in Biden's family since 1893 and was used during his swearing-in ceremonies as Vice President. President Biden said the nation must confront white supremacy, possibly becoming the first president to utter that phrase in an inaugural address. Biden also called on the nation to unite after 4 years of Donald Trump's divisive presidency. And former California Senator Kamala Harris was sworn in as Vice President of the United States on Wednesday, the first woman ever to hold the post. Harris took the oath of office from Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor in a ceremony at the U.S. Capitol. Vice President Kamala Harris is the first black woman and the first woman of South Asian descent to become U.S. Vice President.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
And hours before Joe Biden's inauguration, the U.S. Supreme Court was placed under heavy security because of a bomb threat. The court was given the all-clear shortly after the authorities were alerted to the threat. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. was put on high alert as the incident came just hours before Joe Biden was set to take oath as the 46th president of the country. In a statement, the Supreme Court said it had received a bomb threat, the building and grounds were checked out, and the building was not being evacuated. The US Supreme Court is currently closed to the public in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic and is being patrolled by National Guard troops. The security at national buildings has been heightened in the wake of the Capitol riots that took place on January 6. Outgoing US President Donald Trump delivered his final farewell remarks as the nation's 45th president on Wednesday morning from Joint Base Andrews Air Base in Maryland before he boarded the Air Force One for a flight to his Florida home.
We've worked hard. We've left it all, as the athletes would say, we've left it all in the field. We don't have to come and say, we'll never say in a month when we're sitting in Florida, we're not going to be looking at each other and saying, you know, if we only worked a little bit harder, you can't work harder. And we had a lot of obstacles, and we went through the obstacles, and we just got 75 million votes, and that's a record in the history of sitting presidents. That's an all-time record by a lot, by many millions. In the history of sitting presidents, it's been really just an honor. I will always fight for you. I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better. I wish the new administration great luck and great success. I think they'll have great success. They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague to hit since, I guess you'd say 1917, over 100 years ago. And despite that, the things that we've done have been just incredible, and I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In the moments following Joe Biden taking his oath of office, Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, published an open letter to the new US president, congratulating him on his entry into office. Pope Francis extended cordial good wishes and the assurance of his prayers that God would grant Biden wisdom and strength in the exercise of his high office. The head of the Catholic Church alluded to the COVID-19 pandemic, describing it as the grave crisis facing our human family, adding that the response calls for far-sighted and united answers. Biden is the second Catholic US president, the first being John F. Kennedy, and he attended a pre-inauguration mass this morning at the Cathedral of St. Matthew, the Apostle in Washington. The European Union's top officials expressed relief on Wednesday that Joe Biden would be taking over as President of the United States, warning that the world has changed after 4 years under Donald Trump and promising that transatlantic ties will be different in the future.
More than a transition. Today is an opportunity to rejuvenate our transatlantic relationship, which has greatly suffered in the last 4 years. In these years, the world has grown more complex, less stable, and less predictable. This requires, more than even before, that we, Europeans, take our fate firmly into our own hands to defend our interests and promote our values.
This time-honored ceremony on the steps of the US Capitol will be a demonstration of the resilience of American democracy, and the resounding proof that, once again, after 4 long years, Europe has a friend in the White House.
And Germany's President FrankWalter Steinmeier also spoke of his relief on Wednesday as Joe Biden prepared to be sworn in as President of the United States.
Today is a good day for democracy in the United States of America. It has faced tremendous challenges and endured, despite the attempts to tear at America's institutional fabric. Election workers and governors, the judiciary and Congress have proven strong. I'm greatly relieved that today Joe Biden is being sworn in as president and will be moving into the White House. I know many people in Germany share this feeling.
And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson conveyed his best wishes to the incoming US administration under Joe Biden. Johnson is known as a staunch ally of President Donald Trump and has worked to favour the United Kingdom's ties with the US over its European neighbours.
I know members from across the House will want to join me and echo you in congratulating President-elect Biden on his inauguration later today. As I said when I spoke with him on his election as President, I look forward to working with him and with his new administration, strengthening the partnership between our countries and working on our shared priorities, from tackling climate change, building back better from the pandemic, and strengthening our transatlantic security.
Former Bolivian President Evo Morales offered his thoughts on the legacy of the outgoing US president on Twitter this Wednesday. Morales stressed that Trump attempted a coup in his own country, imposed sanctions, prepared interventions, and promoted fascism and racism to avoid the crisis of capitalism. He stressed that the peoples of the world united will defeat imperialism. The former president also made reference to the incoming US president, Joe Biden, saying with his history of supporting the invasion of Iraq, he now has the historic challenge of reversing Trump's interventionist and segregationist policy, which instead of extending bridges has built walls and imprisoned migrant children. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador expressed his agreement with the newly installed US President Joe Biden's priorities this Wednesday and wished him success in his presidency.
Themes are very important: the pandemic, economic recovery, and migration. And of course, I am wishing President Biden good luck on his job. So we do want cooperation, but we want our sovereignty to be respected. We have not accepted any military cooperation. We do not want our relationship with the United States to be based on that.
And on the day Joe Biden was inaugurated as President of the United States, Cubans expressed hope that his administration will trigger better relations as promised after the major confrontations and tightening of the blockade and sanctions by former President Donald Trump. According to the Cuban Foreign Ministry, the Trump administration stepped up sanctions against Cuba, cost the island some $20 billion. Biden has said that he wants to reverse the damage caused by Trump and bring back some of Obama's policies to normalize ties, including allowing Cuban Americans to visit and send money to their families.
With Joe Biden, relations can improve just like when Obama was in power. I believe that there will be an opening and that Cubans will become closer to Americans, who are each not to blame for their presidents, of course.
Let's hope he follows the policies of President Barack Obama, because Trump was pretty bad in this time as ruler of that power, and we hope that we will maintain the best possible relations. We hope President Biden will not restrict remittances, that he will allow travel here, and that people may invest here. That is normal. It might happen, and if it does, it is good for our people, because we will have a moment to breathe.
Algerians are calling on France to acknowledge its crimes after French President Emmanuel Macron announced that he will take symbolic acts to appease memories of the Algerian war and reconcile the two countries. However, the French leader has stressed he will not issue the apology expected by Algiers in reaction to a long-awaited report by French historian Benjamin Stora.
I think that it is up to the Algerian diplomacy to move forward and to denounce this position, because France is considered one of the worst of colonialism. It has tortured and persecuted, in particular by carrying out nuclear tests on the Algerian people. As Algerians, we must denounce this position, and France must recognize its crimes, murders, torture, and forced displacements of the Algerian people. Concerning what Macron says and the important crimes of France in Algeria, we as Algerians must have a unified position between the people and the government against Macron and France to force them to recognize the crimes committed in Algeria, the very great crimes, the crimes against humanity without precedent in the world. We know that in our country there are men and fighters from the Algerian War of Independence who died and sacrificed themselves for this country. The rest does not interest me. Whether France recognizes or not, it is their business.
A powerful gas explosion tore through a residential building in the Spanish capital Madrid on Wednesday, killing at least 3 people and ripping the facade of the structure. A tower of smoke rose from the building where repairs were being done to a gas boiler and billowed through Toledo Street near the city centre. Images from the scene showed a section of exterior wall had been torn off several floors of the building, leaving rooms exposed to view. Debris covered parked vehicles and the street below. Firefighters were evacuating people from the area. The local mayor told reporters that the building could be at risk of collapse and various people were being treated for injuries. Among those killed were an 85-year-old woman and a man whose age was not immediately known, according to a spokesman for the emergency services.
I was with my 6-year-old child. We were sat in front of the television eating, and the wall where the television was suddenly collapsed. There was a noise and the wall collapsed. We went out running, the wall, a bit of the ceiling too maybe, but I have not seen it. I just saw 8 holes in the wall and that it started to collapse in pieces. Everywhere was full of smoke and my neighbor came with the keys, opened the door shouting, "Get out of the house! Get out of the house!" because he was the keys to our house. I thought it was a bomb.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Malian security forces fired tear gas at dozens of demonstrators in the capital Bamako this Wednesday during a rally against France's military role in the country. The protesters, who were in a central square in the West African city, fled before the gas canisters fired by a large number of police and security forces. Police roadblocks also stopped motorbike convoys of protesters making their way towards the square from different parts of the city. Bamako City Hall had earlier banned the protest against the French military, citing COVID-19 restrictions. France, Mali's former colonial ruler, first intervened in the country in 2013 with the pretext of driving back jihadist forces advancing on Bamako. It now has over 5,000 troops deployed across Africa's arid Sahel region as part of its anti-jihadist force. But the French military presence in Mali is frequently criticised, and activists stage occasional demonstrations in Bamako against French troops. Tensions flared earlier this month when several residents in the village of Bounty said about 20 people in a wedding party had been killed in a strike by a helicopter, while French forces claimed they had carried out an airstrike on jihadists using a fighter jet.
We organized this event on January the 20th, not only to celebrate the feast of our army, but to reiterate our support and confidence in our national army. Today, we have understood that the authority needs popular support more than confrontation with the people. It is in this logic that we have decided to postpone today's activity, but we are going to continue the fight in a different way and with authority. France's strategy is to divide in order to reign, and it is this strategy that is being applied. And we have understood who it wants to divide: the people and their leaders. It wants to put them back to back, whereas we want national unity. So, as we have understood this strategy, we are not going to lend our flank so that today there will be repression.
This Wednesday, Indian farmers entered another round of negotiations with the government in New Delhi regarding the 3 agricultural laws they've been protesting against for weeks. This is the 10th round of talks, with earlier discussions failing to lead to any firm conclusions. Protesting rural workers are demanding the rollback of the new agricultural laws, which they stress favour big corporations and will make family-owned small farms unviable, eventually leaving them landless. Protesters have occupied key highways around the capital to demonstrate against the laws for nearly 2 months. India's Supreme Court has temporarily delayed the implementation of the laws and appointed a 4-member panel to hear farmers' objections in the face of the huge mobilisations. Now we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.